want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut. And another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.
NFC East champs. Divisional champs. NFC champs. And world champs.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour, as we are a mere hours away, well, days away, I guess, from the Philadelphia Eagles opening training camp here in the city of Philadelphia. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, you finally got to tweet live Eagles stuff, and you texted me messaged me earlier, and like, it feels phenomenal. It does. It's great. And we're finally here. We made it through this long. It was hot as you know what in the city of Philadelphia this week or this weekend. I'm so thrilled to get back to Eagles football.
Yeah, absolutely. When I woke up and I was looking around and I was seeing some reports and some Eagles talk that I knew I had to tweet about and I knew would get conversation flowing. That is, of course, outside of speculation about Jalen Hurts. I've kind of stopped tweeting it because it's almost nauseating to talk about it now, because it's like, let's have training camp. Preseason doesn't matter. Let's have training camp. Let's get some actual video of him putting in his work. Let's actually see what we're working with. There's one side of the room, a lot of national media, one side of the room that says Jalen Hurts is good. Jalen Hurts is better than people think. Then there's the other side of the room, which is pretty much all in the state of Pennsylvania, that sits there and says he's not going to be the guy. He's not the answer, whatever. So I've gave up tweeting about those. It's literally just clickbait conversation at this point. But we got conversation going this morning. I announced a 24-hour countdown till reporting. I talked, there's Javon Hargrave, is he going to sign his extension? We picked up former Cowboy and absolute monster of a running back, Jaquan Hardy. And that is pretty much everything. Oh, and of course, I got to tweet out about my boy Britton Covey. So, of course, that definitely made things a little bit better that I got to say that.
Is he going to be this year's Rasul Douglas for you?
He just might be the guy that you just don't want to like, and the guy that I just can't.
I didn't say I don't want to like him. I didn't say I don't want to like him, and I liked Rasul Douglas. I just don't think that he was fast enough, and they played him in the correct.
And I think with Rasul Douglas, the issue became that he was trying to fit like a square into a circular hole, and it just wasn't working. It just didn't make sense. Whereas Britton Covey, you know what you're getting. If they try and make Britton Covey, like they try and play him more than Quez Watkins and try and make him a wide receiver 3, which he clearly isn't on this team, then I'd be like, okay, now I think they're just forcing something that's not there. But given that he'd be your 5th wide receiver and he's going to, hopefully, I think he would help special teams greatly. Why not?
We'll see. Last week we did our offensive depth chart for the Eagles. They were a little similar. Obviously, a couple of things. I had Jalen Reagor. You had Britton Covey on the team. You had Boston Scott. I didn't have Boston Scott, but we'll obviously see how things go over the next couple of weeks. We're 3.5 weeks until the first preseason game against the Jets. So excited to just be able to. It's August 12th. I'm so excited to be able to watch. We won't see the starters. So Carson Strong, Gardner Minshew. We won't see AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. If you see Jalen Reagor out there, that's an issue for him. If he's playing in these these are meaningless preseason games, Jalen Reagor, he's on the bubble. I think he's already on the bubble to make the roster.
He should be playing almost 100% of snaps. The only reason he should come off is because they're trying to get a look at others, because we do have like 15 wide receivers on roster right now. Mm-hmm. So, of course, if you're trying to get a better look, but Jalen Reagor, if all the rumors are true and they want to keep him around and they think that there's an opportunity there, okay, fine. But he better be out there 90% of preseason snaps. The minute he starts being out there less, I think he's made the team, and I do not want to see that. He needs to play every bit of those 3 games.
Or it could be if he starts seeing less, they've already made up their mind that he has no shot to make the team. But we'll see that as we get towards the preseason. As always, before we get started, please follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. You can follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ Harrell54. Follow the Painted Lines on Twitter at the Painted Lines. Also on YouTube at the Painted Lines. And if rate and review the show and let us know how we're doing. All right, so Connor, we are going to discuss the Philadelphia Eagles defensive depth chart. Who we want to see the Eagles keep on their roster. I split it up into 5: defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. If we really wanted to do it quickly, the special teams kicker is going to be Jake Elliott. The long snapper is going to be Rick Lovato. They're locks. The punter probably shouldn't be Aaron Sipas, but they don't have anybody in camp right now to compete with him. So I think he kind of wins that by default, unless they bring somebody in, this week or before preseason games get underway. That's the special teams for the Eagles. Jake Elliott had a really good year last year. And Rick Lovato is one of the best long snappers in the league. Sipas started off well, but then really tanked in the second half of the year. All right, so let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles defense. We're going to start at defensive end. I'll allow you to go first, sir. So who do you have the Eagles keeping at defensive end?
Absolutely. After my number last week, it actually also works out. I have 25 on offense, 25 on defense,
Same.
plus the 3 special teamers. So at defensive end, we got Brandon Graham, we got Josh Sweat, we got Derek Barnett, and he was classified as an edge. I think he can be an edge linebacker hybrid, but Taron Jackson. That is the 4 I have at defensive end. And arguably, when we talk linebacker, Sam Reddick is also going to be that blend of edge linebacker. We know that this defense is going to look really different in the looks that they give. And there's going to be a mix of 3-4, 4-3, maybe even kind of like a 5-2 type look going on. I know they're going to show a bunch of different looks. So that outside of the tackles, they're all going to kind of be hybrids. And, Brandon Graham will probably only be out there in 4-3 situations. There's some guys who you can almost tag as being exclusive in certain situations.
Yeah, we'll see. I have the same for Brandon Graham, and he's going to, if he can come back healthy, which, by all accounts, he's healthy now. He was sorely missed when he got hurt, obviously. Again, after the quarterback, Josh Sweat, kind of his production dropped after he got the contract extension. So we'll see how that goes. I do have Derek Barnett. Unfortunately, I can't believe they brought him back, but he's not going to be a starter. But we'll see if he can maybe get more sacks than penalties like he has for his career. And Taron Jackson, the same thing. They actually have a new room. They call it the DN linebacker, outside linebacker room, and that's where the Hassan Reddicks and the Kyron Johnsons and maybe even the Taron Jacksons. That's kind of where they're going to be. You mentioned we talked about it last year how the Eagles didn't. Gannon, it's tough because Gannon's has talent now, and we know that he was a big name for head coaching positions last year, but I personally I didn't know why, but he didn't have talent last year, and when it was talked about what type of scheme he would be playing, he didn't really say he had one. And I think that was because he didn't really have the players. And then when you have Brandon Graham, your best defensive end, get hurt, that doesn't help things. And then you have Fletcher Cox, who underperformed, that doesn't help things. But now that he has players, you have a corner across from Slay. Now they don't have safeties, but they have some linebackers this year. You're going to see a 4-3, you're going to see a 3-4, you're going to see a 5-2, you're going to see everything. So it'll be hopefully Gannon decides to put pressure on the quarterback this year, get after the quarterback, blitz the quarterback. And it's going to start with the front 4. And, Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat are going to definitely be 2 key guys. Hassan Reddick, obviously, 23 sacks the last 2 years for the Cardinals and for the Panthers. He's coming home, playing at the field in which he played his college ball. He's definitely going to be a big key, and we'll obviously talk about him in a little bit. So we both have 4 defensive ends. Let's move to the defensive tackle position. I think this one's pretty clear. Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams. That's obviously they have the 2 young guys in Davis and Williams was very impressive last year. When they drafted him, everybody remembers the War Room video when Tom Donahue didn't seem pleased about the pick. But Milton Williams was definitely a pleasant surprise. Jordan Davis, the Eagles traded up ahead of Baltimore to get him. He has a chance. He's a monster. Obviously, he's got to control his weight, but we'll see We'll see how he'll be able to do that. And I don't expect him to be right away be on the field for 3 downs, But I think maybe by mid-year, the second half of the year, we're going to see a lot of Jordan Davis eating up space, especially if they go more to that 3-4. And I expect this is going to be Fletcher Cox's last year, most likely in an Eagles uniform. He could get traded by the trade deadline, depending on how the season's going. We'll see. But I think Cox has a chance to, or will come out and be like, look, last year he played down, got cut, came back on $14 million. And he's going to have something to prove. And Javon Hargrave, another trade candidate for the Eagles too. I mean, he's due some money. We'll see. He also could re-sign, but I think they have a really, really good rotation at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same 4 guys. I think it's pretty obvious. Like, you would need a monster performance by a guy like Marlon Tupolito or Marvin Wilson, who they seem to really like, or Renell Wren, who they brought in on the contract. But I mean, then you'd be taking either a linebacker or a DB away, and it sounds like they have quantity over quality in the DB room, at least after the start in 4 or 5, arguably. I mean, it depends at safety what you say is good, because it's an okay safety room overall. But after the start in 5, it's a wide open crapshoot for who might actually make the team, who's going to man what position, who's going to be nickel, who's going to be safety, who's going to be kind of like a blend of the two. We don't know at this point yet. And I think that they'd rather keep more in that room than in the front 4 room, despite what we say about the front 4 and need in the front 4. You also alluded to the linebackers being essentially somewhat being part of that front 4 and bringing the pressure that they're going to be bringing and their usage. The situation between Cox and Hargrave is definitely intriguing to me. I mean, there was somebody who retweeted our tweet, quote tweeted our tweet, and said that on their podcast they had mentioned that maybe Javon Hargrave be the person to be dealt and keep Fletcher Cox around because he's the veteran, because he's older, he's been in Philly all his career. Maybe he'd be willing to take less money next season versus what Javon Hargrave is likely to fetch, because Javon Hargrave is still likely going to fetch a strong amount of money, at least in year 1 of his next contract. I wouldn't be surprised if even year 2, like I wouldn't be surprised if 1.5 years of his next contract, which will probably be 3 years, is fully guaranteed, if not 2 years of it fully guaranteed. So that makes it difficult for us to say, let's go with Javon Hargrave, when that would make a very rich, likely backup. I mean, I know he had a career year with the 7.5 sacks and stuff, but if you drafted Jordan Davis with this type of value, you are so high on Milton Williams like you are in the athleticism that he brings. It just doesn't make sense to bring a guy who might take up more time than they should. And if Javon Hargrave feels like potentially that type of guy who you'd bring in, he's a beast. I like him. If you can find a good rotation between the 3 of them that doesn't take away too much and that also makes Hargrave affordable for us and helps in the long run, I'd be all for it. But at the end of the day, I agree in regards to Hargrave will get paid for more, and he's entering his age 30 season during the first year of his next contract, which obviously... I made the point that Milton Jackson and Fletcher Jackson, a couple years back, Jackson and Fletcher Cox should be cautionary tales of exercising after age 30 contracts. So I don't necessarily believe that we should be all over Javon Hargrave again, unless he has another monster season. If he goes off and he tops this season, well, then we have a whole nother discussion.
I also think it depends on how Milton Williams does in his second year, because while he was pleasantly, surprising last year in the way he played, he could definitely take a step back, and then you have to reevaluate what you're going to do at the defensive tackle position. Obviously, I mean, Jordan Davis is going to be here. We just hope that he can stay in shape and the money doesn't get to his head, which I don't think it will. He doesn't seem like that type of guy, and he's just. I think having his college teammate here is actually going to help him a lot. It won't allow him to get complacent, I should say, and they'll be able to keep up on top of each other. So we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of experience, and I think a pretty good depth on at the front 4, or at least on the defensive line for the Eagles.
And I know one of the biggest question marks around Jordan Davis was how limited of snaps he played at Georgia, and is he going to be able to step into a role? They did, but I mean, I guess the real question becomes, like, you talk about his weight, and then you also talk about that you need to make sure that he can be the 3-down guy too. And I think he can be. I think that that's a bit of an overblown thing that people are just using as we got to poke holes in somebody's game. So let's try and poke holes at the one thing that we know he couldn't do for sure, was to be a 3-down defensive lineman. But like you said, when you've the number one defense in the nation, probably a defense that could play some NFL teams and beat
Might
them
be the best college
effectively
defense in the history of college football.
Exactly. You expect that these guys are going to swap in and out, and the tread on the tire might be good. Maybe this is a good thing about the tread on the tire. Maybe this will be even better for us because he comes in fresher than you would have some potential front four guys who play 95% of snaps for a college team. Who knows? But it is the two things that people question and worry about. And I agree on the Milton Williams front. He needs to obviously remain effective. He has the pass Russian repertoire. We saw it. He looked good. He's very athletic. And if he's out there splitting time and Jordan Davis is beside him, I think you have a guy who's going to eat up space and you got an athlete like Milton Williams. That's a deadly combination.
Yeah. And it's going to be up to Jonathan Gannon to figure out how to use these new weapons that he has. I mean, as I think Howie has said it at the beginning of the offseason, they're renting Jonathan Gannon. They expect him to be a head coach next year. We thought he was going to get the Texans job this year, didn't, but there's a good chance that he may be gone next year, which is why at the end of the season I advocated for bringing in one of these defensive head coaches that used to be a defensive coordinator, because they could provide insight to Jonathan Gannon and also could help with the defense. And maybe they have the guy on staff that they already, where if Gannon were to go somewhere else, that they could promote him and not much changes. But let's move to the linebacker position. I'll let you have the honors here, Connor. Who do you got the Eagles keeping at linebacker? They're probably the deepest linebacker group they've had in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had some tough decisions. I think it's going to come down to who they really like. If they find a value for somebody else in special teams, or if they find a value in this, mixed room that they have at the edge and the linebacker rooms. I got Kaiser White. I got TJ Edwards, Sam Reddick, Davion Taylor. Obviously, they love Davion Taylor, Nakobe Dean, and I have Kyron Johnson. I think they really like Kyron Johnson. He's very athletic. He can be a sneaky athletic guy, despite the size. Like, he would be undersized from a linebacker perspective and from an edge perspective, but he is fast. His get off can be impressively fast. The only one I really debated was, because I see Jacoby Stevens, Sean Bradley, and Patrick Johnson would be the bubble guys in this circumstance. Jacoby Stevens has been such a disappointment. They've tried him at safety. They've tried him at linebacker. They've kind of tried him very slightly in like a Malcolm Jenkins-esque role. He had the slot a little bit, but he's really generally disappointed. Nothing great. Sean Bradley, he's a special teamer, and they seem to like him. So that's why I had a lot of like conversation in my head, like, would I keep Sean Bradley? Are they going to keep Sean Bradley? But then I was like, I think they're going to keep more in the defensive back room. And then Patrick Johnson, he's an athlete. He's a guy like Taron Jackson. He's a guy who can probably blend at the linebacker edge position and work in one of those roles. But I just don't. I feel like Kyron Johnson brings something to the special teams with that speed, and he also brings something to that front four / back four linebacking room on certain occasions. He'll be able to be used in a number of different interesting, more creative schemes. So that's why I got Kyron Johnson. If some guys falter in the defensive back room and Bradley or Johnson has a really good camp, I could see one of them squeezing in just based off of that. But I got 6.
So I also have 6. The starters, Nakobe Dean, TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, because Sam Reddick is going to be a starter, but he's going to be at end. But I have him. They're my top 4. I debated between Davion Taylor and Patrick Johnson. I went with Taylor, but I think Johnson has a really good chance to make the team, and if he doesn't, he'll be on the practice squad. And the 6th is Sean Bradley, only because they like his special teams ability. Special teams hasn't been great under Clay. It wasn't great under Clay last year. It hasn't been really great the last couple of years. And a lot of the focus goes to the returners on that, which sometimes isn't fair, but it's understandable, especially when it's Jalen Reagor back there and he's not catching the ball or catching it at the 1 and only getting to the 7. Like he has some dumb he does some dumb things back there, and it just makes the entirety of the special teams look bad when it could primarily be the returner. So I went, like I said, Nakobe Dean, who I think is going to be a stud. I love Nakobe Dean. Everybody talked about possibly drafting him in the first round. He might be the best. I think he's going to be the leader of the defense by the end of the year. By the end of the year, this rookie is going to be the leader of this defense. He's going to be the guy that his teammates come to. He's going to be calling the defense. He'll have the green dot on his helmet. It's going to look. He's going to have that type of year. I don't know if he'll have he's not going to have the Micah Parsons stats, but he's going to have an impact for this defense where, he's going to be able to go, side to side. He'll go. You saw him last year playing. He was able to go sideline to sideline against Michigan in the college football playoff game and against Alabama, and you know how good Alabama is and the type of weapons they have. So he's all over the field. TJ Edwards, they gave him a contract, and they like him a lot. While he's undersized, he's still really good. I mean, this isn't the Alex Singleton and who's the other linebacker that we hated that led the world in missed tackles.
It was Alex Singleton that led the world in missed tackles.
I thought there was somebody else.
They cut the buddy that they cut earlier in the season.
What was his name?
Oh man,
he ended up on San Francisco's practice squad though.
Yeah,
but yeah, he was.
He wasn't worth remembering.
Nate Gary.
Yes, Nate Gary.
He was terrible. And then, like I said, Hassan Reddick is going to be. He's going to be an end. He'll be getting one after quarterback. If I see Hassan Reddick dropping back more than 5 times a game to cover somebody, Gannon deserves to be fired. He should no. That is not what Reddick does. Reddick goes after the quarterback.
I addressed it at the signing of Hassan Reddick. His best seasons have been when he's been more of a pass rusher than a drop back linebacker. So you cannot play him often.
And then Kazir White could be the sneaky signing of the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Kazir White has a chance to be on the field. The head coach of the Chargers was upset that he left. He wanted to bring him back. And the coach for the Chargers is a defensive-minded guy. So we'll see how that goes. And then Taylor and Bradley are there primarily for special teams. Kyron Johnson, I don't know. I hope he'll be on if he makes it through like waiver wires and all that. He'll be on the practice squad. I think he just needs another year of retooling, and we'll see. And then like I said, Sean Bradley and Davion Taylor will be there for special teams when they need to get on the field to get on the field. As Dave McNulty says, just my opinion, but I still think there's more pressure on Gannon than the players on D. I 100% agree. It's all on Gannon now. He has the players. He didn't have the players last year. 100% agree. Can see why. Like he played his safeties at Citizens Bank Park. He played them 50 yards, 60 yards back. But now he's got the players. He better show us something. Yeah,
like at this point, we're talking about a guy who he has to put the players in the right positions to succeed. So exactly as you said, if he ends up putting Reddick in a drop back situation a lot of the time, then he's just not using him to his strength. And Marina was joining in on the conversation as well. She said Bradley will make roster for special teams and depth as well. Kyron Johnson. I can see a world where that happens. I just think that the Eagles really liked Davion Taylor last year. And I think that a lot of people are kind of pushing that real love for him aside because they addressed the linebacker position so much with Hassan Reddick, with Kaiser White, with Nakobe Dean. So everyone just thinks that like Davion Taylor, because of the injury and because he kind of fell off the face of the earth, that he's not going to make the roster. But if we're talking Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley from a who do the Eagles like more perspective, which that could definitely be the final decision that comes down there, I think they like Davion Taylor more. They really were giving him every opportunity. Sean Bradley only saw, I think it was 7% of defensive snaps last year. And there was opportunity to give him more as the season wore on. They were, but if they were terrible and he couldn't get out on the field, that speaks more to the fact, because they even tried to push Davion Taylor and then the injury happened. But Davion Taylor was well on his way to being out there 75% of the time or more. But it just so happened that the injury came down. Marina also. Reddick will not play defensive end. He will play Sam. We
He could
completely
be the rushing
agree.
backer. Like, I don't want to see him covering anybody. He is a defensive end, just at the linebacker position. Like, he's a rushing linebacker.
My concern, if you put him at the Sam, though, is you're playing on the strong side, so you're going to play a game on the side with the tight end or with the extra blocker. Who's to say that that's not going to lead him to be the guy that has to go off ball and defend? Like, I almost think I'd rather see him coming from the weak side where they have less support. And then she says Dean and Taylor will be the fourth linebackers when Reddick moves up.
Dean's a starter.
Dean's a
going
starter.
to be the middle linebacker. He's going to have the green helmet on. He'll have the green dot on his helmet.
He'll be the spy. He'll be watching that backfield. You know, he's going to have all those roles. I can see Davion Taylor. Davion Taylor, the thing is, he has the athleticism, but I just think he needs to work on being a coverage linebacker. He's not really a coverage linebacker. He's not really worth the time. Like, I have a hard time with Davion Taylor because he wasn't good in coverage, but he has the athleticism to be good in coverage.
So we got what's the chances we get Jesse Bates? We're going to talk about that when we get to the safety position. But let's move to the cornerback position for now. I have the Eagles keeping 6, Connor. I have Darius Slay, James Bradbury, Avonte Maddox, maybe the best trio of corners in the league. If they're not the best, which there could be better ones out there, they're definitely in the top 5, top 3. Then I got them keeping Jimmy Moreland, who has a chance to, if they wanted to move people around, could play the slot. Zach McPherson, who they like a lot, and for special teams, I have Mario Goodrich. We were talking about it before we came on. It was between Mario Goodrich and Josh Jobe. I like Goodrich, and I'm an Alabama fan, and so I've watched Jobe a lot. But Goodrich, I think he should have been drafted. Both probably should have been drafted, but I don't know how Goodrich didn't get drafted. I think that Goodrich definitely has a chance to, Bradbury's here on a 1-year deal. Slay has a couple of years he's going on the other side of 30. Goodrich has a chance he doesn't have to start right away. He has a chance to groom into a really good corner playing behind these 2 studs that he's got in front of him. So I got Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, Jimmy Moreland, Zach McPherson, and Mario Goodrich.
Yeah, I got Slay, Bradbury, Maddox. I think I agree with you there. That one's pretty obvious. It is an amazing trio. It's a great trio. They did a great job grabbing James Bradbury, and Avonte Maddox took massive steps forward last season. He deserved that extension, and he is every bit of the nickel back that we basically had. The last one I could think of like that was like Robinson. That would be the last one that I thought of. And Robinson, obviously, we had to let him go because the guy got paid. And
remember, they brought him in here to be the number 2 corner, I think, and he was not good. And they moved him into the slot, and you saw what he did.
He was great. Exactly. He was great. I got McPherson. Obviously, draft capital kind of alludes to, we don't like to use that, but McPherson shown a little bit that I think they want to see more out of him. I took Tay Gowan. I'm a big Tay Gowan guy, so I guess I
forgot about Tay Gowan.
It may not be fair of me, but to me, he's got that prototypical outside cornerback body. He's big, he's long, he's decently athletic. He had great success at UCF, and I understand that hasn't necessarily translated to the NFL level, but he hasn't really gotten an opportunity to prove himself. And I think this training camp and this preseason, they're going to get a lot of looks like these guys that aren't sure things, like you said, Josh Jobe, Mario Goodrich, Tay Gowan, Kerry Vincent, Josiah Scott. There's so many guys. There's so many names that are going to get looks. I just like Tay Gowan because I think he can come around, and that size, you can't replicate that type of size and athleticism. And I have Jimmy Moreland making it as well. That's going to be another under the radar move. There's to me, because Paul is in here saying I have Goodrich and Jobe on the practice squad. So I want to talk about that. There's a lot of guaranteed money for UDFAs locked up in the 2 of them, that one of them I can almost bet right now will make that roster. Without a doubt, one of them is making that roster. You don't spend 120,000 guaranteed money on Goodrich and Jobe each and not keep one of them. Like that's
And
high
I
end
have
money.
Goodrich and you have Job. Like,
And I have Job. I
the
didn't
other
say
one will
Job
be
though
practice
because I
squad.
have Job moving to safety. Is why I haven't mentioned Job yet. But when we
Okay.
get to safety, it'll be further discussed there. But yet, like I think that listen, I think the Eagles are going to have a lot of tough decisions to make, especially at linebacker and cornerback. And there's like everyone's like, oh, this got to be on practice squad. This got to be on practice squad. There's going to be at least two guys that we cut that get sniped for other teams.
Definitely.
We just have to face it. So that's why you can't look at Goodrich and Job and say those are practice squad guys. You move one of them to the practice squad unless they tanked their training camp and tanked their preseason. They're going to end up on another roster. They won't make it to a practice squad.
Yeah. I love this back or the comments that we have coming in, about the different. So the Marinas comment, Paul, I agree on passing down in regards to Hassan Reddick.
Oh, Reddick, yeah, because Paul says Reddick will play traditional defense.
So he doesn't put his hand in the ground anyway. He's a stand-up linebacker, like the rushing, a 3-4 rushing outside linebacker. He won't put his hand in the ground anyway, and that's it. That's what they're going to do with him. He'll be it'll appear that there are 4 down linemen, but he'll be standing up. So we'll see. But again, I want Reddick going after the quarterback. 23 sacks the last 2 years. As you mentioned earlier, Connor, when Reddick was in his early days in Arizona, when he was covering, when he was dropping back, he wasn't good. He was good. He got paid because he was getting after the quarterback. So I believe that's what the Eagles should have him doing. Good. There could be a player or two where he's got to drop back. It happens. That's what the defense calls for. But he shouldn't be doing that. Again, no, he should be rushing the quarterback.
This is cool. We actually have a conversation here where it's almost like one agrees with one of us, the other agrees. Well, okay, Paul is on the side that neither Job nor Goodrich should make it. So he's kind of on my side, but not really. But then we have Chris Scott who says completely agree with Paul except for Goodrich. They're keeping Goodrich. So you got Chris on your side in this regard.
I do think Goodrich is good. Like, we'll see.
With Paul, his statement is accurate. Goodrich to me, I think needs more time to get ready for the NFL. Job, I think could be ready for the NFL. I just don't think he's a cornerback.
He's not fast enough to be a cornerback.
He's not fast enough. Exactly. That's why I think he's a safety.
Which was always my argument with Rasul Douglas. When we always had them arguments in the past, I didn't think Douglas was fast enough. Now, obviously, in the defense he's playing in Green Bay, he's always shown that he was a ball hawk. I just thought playing under who was our defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, that the way that Jim Schwartz played his secondary, that wasn't the scheme that fit Rasul Douglas. That's why I wanted him at safety. So we have that we've had this debate before in regards to a different player.
And they are so similar. Like you look at the body type that these two guys have. Like when you look at Job and you look at Rasul Douglas side by side, they look very similarly physically, and they have the same similar deficiencies in their game. I just think Job's a little bit better, and I think his best path to like potentially being a starter 2 or 3 years down the road would be to move him to safety, but not to keep him at cornerback.
I like Job at safety, just not corner, and that's. Kivo says Reddick will technically be the designated blitzer on every play, which is what we've been saying. Like, I don't want to see him dropping back, more than 5 times a game. I want to see him going after the quarterback.
I think no matter what they do, like Reddick is never going to be the drop back guy, but you may see him at linebacker, like diagnosing a play and then going like it's not constantly boom, boom, right to the play. But I agree with Kevo in regards to he's a designated blitzer. It's just when is he going to blitz is a big question.
Well, he's always in passing downs, he's going after the quarterback. It's going to be those plays like on first down or 2nd and 5 when the opposing offense could, in theory, run the football. When Dak's going to hand the ball off to Zeke, what is Reddick going to do? Because he's going to have to try to get around Tyron Smith. And that's not an easy task, even though Smith is getting up there in age for Dallas. But like, he's going to have to take him man on man and try to shed that block to tackle Zeke. We'll see how it happens on it. And obviously, it'll all depend on what the scheme looks like and whatnot. So let's move to the final defensive position, the safety position. I got the Eagles keeping 5 safeties. It would have been 4 because I had the Eagles trade him for Jesse Bates. But I don't think Howie is going to give up the capital that's needed to get Jesse Bates. It's Howie. We know that Howie doesn't, just like, at least it appeared, he didn't value the linebacker position. He got Nakobe, who could have gotten Nakobe in the first, could have got him in the second, didn't get him to the third. So people can say, well, he still doesn't value it, but he did get a really good player. He doesn't value the safety position that much either. Like, they didn't bring Malcolm Jenkins back. The contract that he got from the Saints wasn't that good. Like, the Eagles could have afforded the contract that the Saints gave Malcolm a couple years back when he left. So I have them keeping Jaquiski Tart. I actually think he'll be a starter, in all honesty. I think he has a chance to start. Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps will split some time as the other safety. One of them could also play that Malcolm role as a linebacker safety, covering the tight end or whatnot. And then I have them keeping Kevon Wallace and Andre Chicher, and that's more of a special teams thing. And Wallace it's such a bummer with Wallace. I had high hopes for Kevon Wallace when the Eagles drafted him a few years back. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. But looking and seeing his Instagram, Twitter, and all that, he looks like he's put in the work this offseason. He knows that this is it for him. Because if he doesn't make it, the Eagles are going to cut him. He'll get a shot elsewhere as a backup, as a special teams player, whatnot, because he has talent, he's athletic. But if he wants to succeed here in Philly, he knows he has to do it. He's not going to be a starter, but he's going to have to go out there, show it on special teams, show it in the preseason. We know that the Eagles starters aren't playing in the preseason. It's just not happening. So he's going to get a lot of playing time. He's going to have to go out there and prove that he knows the defense, that he can cover, his half of the field, his third of the field, and that he can, make tackles when a tight end beats a linebacker. He's going to have to prove all that. And I think that he's not going, to be the starter, but he'll make the team. So I got Tart, Harris, Epps, Kevon Wallace, and Andre Chicheri as the safeties. There's my 25 on defense.
Yeah, for me, I have it similarly. I think like Marcus Epps is obviously, I think he's going to be the safety one. He's going to be the starter. Philadelphia loves him so much. Well, not Philadelphia, the city, but like the staff loves him so much and thinks he can take that massive step forward that I think that they're going to give him as much of a chance to be that 80, 85, 90% of the time on the field. Anthony Harris obviously makes it. Jaquiski Tart obviously makes it. I think Tart and Harris are going to be the guys who split. I don't have them keeping Kevon Wallace. I think his role on special teams is easily replaceable, but I do have them keeping Andre Chicher because I don't think you replace a guy who's starting to be called an ace. He's literally becoming called a special teams ace because he's such a good gunner. He's so smart. He's got a high IQ when he's out there on special teams and he's going to make the play. And then I have Josh Jobe as a safety. I classified him as a safety. Like I was alluding to, I think if I was to debate between Kevon Wallace or Josh Jobe, I think Jobe can do the things Wallace can do on special teams, probably to equal effectiveness. And I think that he has a higher upside to become something because while Kevon Wallace has been putting in the work, there's just been so much disappointment around him in regards to what we thought he would be versus what he actually is becoming and showing. So unfortunately,
there's a couple of things going on in the comment section. First, Paul said, I like a deal to send Hargrave, Reagor, and a 2023 third-round pick for Bates and a fifth. Cincinnati would not take that. I would do it. It'd be a great trade for the Eagles. But since he's going to want a first or a second, definitely.
I mean, Hargrave, Hargrave potentially could help the deal, but I don't think it sweetens the deal as much. It is the last year of his deal, so they would have to give money, and like the whole situation is they're not giving Bates money right now either. So what makes the debate becomes: would they pay an aging defensive tackle in Hargrave?
Isn't Bates young too?
Yeah, Bates is definitely younger. I think he's like 25 or 26.
Look, I like Bates a lot, and I would do a deal if the Eagles could do it, but I don't think Howie – what are they at cap-wise? What, like about 10, 15 million?
They got about 10 million, but I think more of that will be carried over than
and that's what they like to do. They're going to have the 2 first-rounders next year. And you have to think about it. They're 2 years away from having to pay and I get it. The salary cap's going to go up unless we have another pandemic. The salary cap's going to keep going up. I mean, they're still going to have to pay Devontae Smith. Jalen Hurts potentially has to get paid. So, like, if they're going to roll over as much as they can. And unfortunately, Howie doesn't want to – Howie doesn't want to trade a premium pick for a guy that may not re-sign here, because you can't re-sign Bates until after the year. So you can make the trade and maybe have a wink deal. Hey, you're going to sign a deal after the season, but how do you know the season doesn't go well? He doesn't like playing in Philly, and he goes, yeah, you know what? I don't want to. I'm out. You definitely don't want to do that. And then
no, it's expensive. It's definitely extremely rich to consider Bates. And we know Howie is A, he doesn't spend very much, and B, he kind of likes to have the draft capital to prepare to leverage for more of a quarterback type need. He's going to keep those 2 first rounders, and to pry Bates away, it's going to take a minimum first, I think, for Cincinnati to even consider prying him away. And Howie will keep those 2 firsts until the end of the year, because he needs to see, is Jalen Hurts the guy or not? Because if not, then he can leverage those 2 firsts to move up and probably draft a quarterback like it's being believed.
And then Chris Scott with a question: would you guys re-sign Slay through 2025? And if Bradbury plays well, would you re-sign him for 3 more years? I would. I mean, Slay, feel like he's getting better as he's getting older. Maybe it's just being out of Detroit. I don't know. But, I mean, Slay is still good. Slay is really good. We're obviously going to have to see how he performs this year, because, again, on the other side of 30, things could change quickly. But, I mean, the way Slay played last year, dude is a ball hawk. They need to find a way to and they may even do it, and that could lower his cap hit, and that could give them more, more cap room. Bradbury, I know he signed the 1-year deal, more of a prove it deal for himself to try to get a payday next year. If you remember in 2017, they signed Alshon to a 1-year deal, gave him a contract extension midway through the season. Same thing could happen with Bradbury, so it wouldn't surprise me.
I don't know if I would yet. I'm so skeptical. Like, we've had so many of these re-signing players, or Howie kicking the can down the road with players for a couple seasons into their 30s, and they just falter. And I don't know if I'm prepared to take that risk of having these guys falter, because the issue, Slay is great. Bradbury's great. They're both over the age of 30. Bradbury's just turning 30. Slay's 32 years old. There's going to be a cliff. And the thing in the NFL, especially in a pass-heavy NFL, and the speed that some of these guys are coming out of college with, the athleticism that some of these guys are coming out of college with, when they fall off the cliff, it's going to be fast. And I love Darius Slay, don't get me wrong. But once you fall behind at cornerback, there's no coming back. And if you still got $10 or $15 million backloaded in a contract with these guys, you're stuck. Like, I'm almost in the position where I'd rather be okay with somebody else pay, almost like the Malcolm Jenkins thing. I know it wasn't expensive, but it might have been a little rich for Howie's blood. You let him go. Like, I almost think that could be a circumstance with Slay and Bradbury. Nelson got paid. Nelson's contract, though, was that could have been matched, especially when you see Bradbury was a debate, Nelson or Bradbury. I think I like Bradbury more. Bradbury and Nelson played similarly last year. Bradbury was in a far more difficult situation for himself. He was the CB1 on a team that was a defense that was on the field a ton because the Giants sucked. Their offense was really bad. Steven Nelson was on an okay defense, still trying to, figure themselves out, but he made some bad plays. He got burned on a lot of plays. So I was okay with letting him go and bringing Bradbury in. Would I sign any of them for that type of, like, if the first year is guaranteed, or first year for Bradbury guaranteed, and then there's a little flexibility in year 2 and 3, okay, I could do it. But I don't want to see much money in years 2 and years 3, and I don't think that Slay or Bradbury would agree to a deal that doesn't give them a little more guarantee as they get older.
I think it probably be one or the other, and it'll be Slay, because Slay's been here, kind of has that foundation. And, if all things go well for the Eagles, they won't have to draft a quarterback next year, and you can use one of those first rounders on a corner. I mean, it should be a deep corner draft. A lot of guys coming out, so they could potentially do that. Have that guy play, behind Slay, learn from him, and then transition into that number 1 role. Chris Scott says we could get Bates for Andre Dillard in a second. I've been debating the whole, and Connor, me and you have debated the whole Andre Dillard thing, because we don't know if he's going to make the team. But they have the first round capital in them, and we hate to talk about that, but Howie does live by that, if you think about it. But we know how bad that Cincinnati offensive line is. I still think they're going to want a first for Bates. It's going to be tough, but the Bengals don't really have to give him up. I mean, he won't play, potentially won't play, but they don't have to give him up unless they get what they want. So we'll see. But
thank you, Chris, for correcting. Bradbury's just turned 28, so you'd be signing him to a 3-year deal when he's 29. I mean,
I still would go Slay over Bradbury. Personally, I think Slay is better. And obviously, before when he was with Carolina, Bradbury was really good, obviously, an all-pro corner. But I like Slay. Excuse me, I like Slay's swagger. But playing with the Giants can, defeat you as a person after the way that they've played under Joe Judge the last couple of years.
I think Darius Slay also, he's a ball hawk, but I don't necessarily, I don't believe he has to play the ball. He has a name that basically shuts down half a field just by namesake. And so, James Bradbury, I don't necessarily feel is that same way. Darius Slay's been a shutdown corner just based off of his IQ and how he plays the ball, how he plays the body. He's just such a smart cornerback. And that could be what, allows him to be able to be a high-end cornerback till he is, like you said, 34, 35, 36. You never know. You might be able to get him a bit longer like that.
He might even be able to transition to safety where, he doesn't have to worry about running with the number one receiver all the time.
Yeah, you definitely could consider that. And then it's not, wasting money or losing any money. There's so much going on. So Paul says, let's touch on this. Paul says Eagles will lose Cox, Graham, Kelsey contracts off the books. He's referencing the fact that they'll have about $30 million. I believe they're going to be $30 million under the cap next year. Seems to be the discussion flowing. I think Cox can come back. He just has to be cheap. $14 million wasn't cheap. That contract this year is not that cheap. That was just to free up a few $1 million from the initial contract. Kelsey will keep coming back as long as we want him. If they don't think Cam Jurgens is ready and they say, you sure you want to come back one more year? Kelsey will come back another year.
He always says he has fun. He's having fun playing under
and if you had fun last year in that predicament in Philadelphia, you're going to have a blast this year. You're going to want to sign a 2-year deal.
You hope so.
You hope so. You hope so. If what everybody is saying is true, you hope so. Yes. Graham, I can see. But the thing with Graham is Graham wants to be an Eagle for life. I think he'd be the most likely to take the team-friendly deal and continue to come back.
I think he'll be back. It wouldn't shock me if within the next couple of weeks he resigns and he signs an extension.
The thing with Kelsey is he doesn't have to take a team-friendly deal because he's so good year in and year out. He's always a top 5 center. So the Eagles know they kind of can't discount that. Whereas Brandon Graham or a guy like Fletcher Cox, where they're older, they're beginning their decline, they can leverage that. And Fletcher Cox, man, he's on the books for $10 million dead next season. So you can be like, Cox, man, we're paying you $10 million already. Let's work out a smaller deal. You're only going to play 45% of snaps or whatever. We ain't paying you double-digit dollars here when you're already getting $10 million from us.
It's obviously going to come down to how Milton Williams and Jordan Davis look. If Williams takes a step back and Jordan Davis doesn't look like the guy we think he's going to be, then Fletcher Cox has the upper hand there. So you
bring back Javon Hargrave. You bring back the younger guy. You bring back the guy who you could give a little bit of money where, the guaranteed money would be in a guy who's going to be at the start of next year 30 and then his age 31 season, whereas Fletcher Cox, you'd be throwing money into a guy who's 32, I believe, 33 years old. You'd be throwing back money into that. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. With Hargrave, you probably still have a couple more seasons to really work with and leverage with that contract. Whereas Cox, I think, just needs to be team friendly for a change. Unless he has a big year And like you said, Jordan Davis flat out fails, or like both Williams and Davis aren't what we thought, or Williams does regress a little bit, then I'm sitting there and I'd be like, well, you could probably consider bringing both of them back and give Cox a little bit more money. But eventually you have to move on from some of these aging guys. Like, I understand we seem to be so attached to some of these guys in Philadelphia and with some of these Eagles. If Brandon Graham or Fletcher Cox to command a lot of money, I think Kelsey retires before he goes to another team. I think he will always come back as long as Philly needs him, but he will retire as an Eagle. Cox or Graham, I think they've openly spoke seemingly with a willingness to move on and move elsewhere. I think they would go elsewhere, and I'd be open to letting them go elsewhere if it means if they're asking a little bit more.
Graham spoke today and talked about how he wants to play and he wants to come back, and then they could be potentially working on something. So that's why I say, wouldn't shock me if in the next couple of weeks we hear an extension for Brandon Graham and he's back in Philly. Like he'll be able to retire an Eagle.
Yeah, and then Randall says Cox is 31 and only had 3.5 sacks last year. 100%. But that's the reason he has to take the discount. He has to take the hometown discount and the fact that they've already signed him a check for $10 million to not be on the roster next year if he so decides to go elsewhere. We expected more from Cox last year. Was the defense as an entirety a mess? Absolutely. Can we say it's all on Cox, or can we say it's all on Hargrave? No, Hargrave did better than Cox. Hargrave had a career year from a sack perspective. He had his 7.5 sacks. There's no reason Cox couldn't have got similarly. Like, Cox should have got more. He should have done more. And I understand there was a lot of questions. And
as Kevo says, we have the young replacements at every position except corner and safety. I don't know if we have young. I'm still iffy on Josh Sweat. Like, he has the potential, but when he got paid, he went downhill. They still need a young defensive end, which I think next year they definitely will get.
And now I'd be really concerned about, like, Brandon Graham went down and then Josh Sweat wasn't as good. Like, does he need another guy on the other side of him? Like, I understand Hassan Reddick's there now, so maybe the guy is in-house that can help to take some attention off of Josh Sweat so that he can do his thing. But then you just paid a guy who requires help along the line to be able to get his pressure. At least he can get the pressure. It's not like Derek Barnett, who can't even get the pressure himself. But, I mean, I have my skepticisms on Josh Sweat as well, I guess is what I'm trying to say, LJ.
Chris says if Hargraves is re-signed before the regular season starts, the Eagles save 10 to 13 million this season. That's when I believe we could trade for Bates. I'm all for trading for Bates. I originally had Bates on my 53-man roster, but I don't see Howie trading a first-round pick. I don't think a second-round pick will do it. It's going to have to be a first-round pick. If Howie can do it for a second-round pick, fine, because we'll have 2 firsts next year. We got that extra second in 2024, I think. So, like, by all means, do it.
I'm okay with like a 2 and a 4 or 2 and a 5, but there's no way I'm giving a first. Like, but at this point, the ball is not really in the Bengals' court it is for a bit, but it's going to slowly move out of the court the longer that this drags out. So they're going to need to eventually say, okay, if our asking price is a first and a third or whatever, they're going to have to tone it back and be realistic about it. And Chris, the issue is not money. We understand the money is fun. Howie will make it work. He will get Bates. If he thinks he can get Bates and he doesn't have to give up the draft capital, like significant draft capital, he'll do it and he'll make a contract work. We know he will. Nobody's denying that.
That's fake anyway.
Well, exactly. You're talking to LJ Harrell, who is one of the premier like protesters against the cap and believing that it doesn't even exist. So really, I mean, I agree. But the money's not the factor. The draft capital is the factor in a Bates deal.
It is definitely. Lots of good young defensive ends in the 2023 draft. Definitely agree. The number 1 overall pick is going to be Will Anderson from Alabama. He's a freaking monster. He should
be, but I do think there's going to be an overcompensation this season on the quarterback position. I think you're going to see quarterback. You're going to see some quarterbacks. It depends
because after CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, like it depends on who's going to be up there. Because like say Jacksonville's number 1 overall, They don't need a quarterback. They're trying
Oh,
to
they got
launch.
Will Anderson, yeah. But
exactly.
say it's the Texans or the Falcons back there, then
Yeah. Well, the Falcons like Desmond Ritter, so they may not need to go quarterback.
or even the Lions. The Lions would have
The
to
Lions
go
would
quarterback.
potentially go quarterback. So it does all depend on who has the number one pick.
Kevo makes an interesting point. Cox's setback was clearly because of
I
the
agree with
scheme.
this.
Gannon doesn't allow the tackles to attack like our past coaches. He instructs them to break down, read, and react. Exactly why we're good at linebacker now.
I actually agree with that. Like under Schwartz,
agree.
it was stop the run on your way to the quarterback. Like just
didn't Cox make a statement in season that they basically tried to make him walk back?
He doesn't get paid to cover screens or something.
Yeah,
I agree. Like, why would you have a 340-pound guy covering a screen? It makes zero sense. So I agree with him.
So, but the thing with that then, Kevo, is he has to come out and like have those 3.5 sacks he had last season in like the first 2 or 3 weeks. If the scheme works and if the scheme is done right by Gannon this year, we should see a resurgence from Fletcher Cox. But I don't know if we're necessarily going to see it. I don't know if I'm on board with saying we're going to see that resurgence from Fletcher Cox.
So
I think age factors into this too.
Yeah, it does. Randall says if we can't get Bates, what's wrong with Chuck Clark? The Eagles were talking to Chuck Clark on doing a Clark for Reagor trade. It just broke down at the draft.
Yeah, it was like Clark or it was Reagor and like I think it was a third for Clark
something like
or
that.
something.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with Chuck Clark. I just don't know.
I don't think Howie sees safety as the need that the fans do. I just don't. I think that Howie has said basically Jonathan Gannon's going to get creative. He is going to go in there and he is going to use all these guys in multiple different positions with multiple different looks. And we don't need all these safeties. We're not going to play the safeties back in the end zone, waiting for the free running wide receiver. There's going to be this defense is going to look so different. And I think that Howie is basically saying safety doesn't matter in this defense. We're going to be multiple. We're not going to need to worry so much about the safety because there's going to be so many different lines of defense before those final 2 safeties. And people are discounting how much they really like Marcus Epps. He literally maybe it was the 4 weeks of really like dead silence in Eagle Land that got people forgetting what they were saying about Epps, but Epps and Hurts were the 2 main talking points for like a month after the draft because they want Epps to work and they are going to make him work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Epps fan, and that's why I thought that they would, when they jumped ahead of Baltimore, it could have been Kyle Hamilton, especially after Jamison Williams got drafted by Detroit. I didn't expect it to be Jordan Davis. I thought maybe they would go linebacker, safety, but like you said, he doesn't see it as a big need. Like we see it as a big need.
Oh, and by the way, Randall, it is an option. Chuck Clark is an option. If you have to give up a first for Jesse Bates or you have to give up a 3 and you offload a guy like Jalen Reagor or one of your disgruntled players, yes, absolutely. You take the discount on the safety position because you already have at least one guy who you have a lot of faith in. You're only looking to get that second safety or a 1A, 1B type work. 100%. If it's a 3 in Reagor or something, you do it.
As Kevo says, having a guy like Jordan Davis that can eat up blockers is going to help the linebackers. It's going to help the defensive ends. It's going to help out Fletcher Cox. So we should see a more aggressive defense this year. And again, if we don't see a more aggressive defense, I don't know what the hell Gannon's problem is. I really don't.
He fought for it. He complained about it. Like he basically said it without saying it that he needed this type of help and this type of support. He got it. Howie heard him loud and clear, and now he has it. So he has to make it work. I understand he's a super intelligent football mind. I understand that's why he's basically being recruited. He's already probably being wined and dined by other teams, prepping for next season and taking them on as a head coach. I know we may not see it, but we know that he's going to be gone eventually.
As Howie said earlier this offseason, they're renting Jonathan Gannon.
Shout out, Randall. Thanks. Tomorrow is camp, baby. We are so excited for that to be back. Thanks for stopping in, and thanks for generating some great conversation.
The one thing about camp that I missed is that when it was at Lehigh and the players stayed in the dorms and you would see them, unloading their cars with TVs and game systems. We don't see that anymore because they stay home. They go to Lehigh, or they go to NovaCare. I miss and when it was at Lehigh University, be able to go and watch them. Like I remember going back in 2000, and I don't even know when it was. I went. I think not when Namdi game I went, or even, I don't know if I went when T.O. was here, but I heard it was ridiculous down there when T.O. was here. But yeah, I miss the training camp at Lehigh University. I wish they would go back to it, whether it's at Lehigh or at a different university, but it's never going to happen.
Don't worry, Paul. We do not forget
they were in play for a lot of players this offseason.
Yeah, I'm starting to be skeptical about what in play really meant, whether it was Howie making a phone call. Oh, I'd like X amount guaranteed and this much annually. Oh, thank you for the phone conversation, hangs up the phone. Like, I'm wondering how much in on safety he was.
Oh, he has his reporters on call where he's like, yeah, as soon as Marcus Williams signs, he calls him up and goes, yeah, we had a deal for him. Like, or we put out a contract for him. He just didn't choose it. I'm with you. I don't know what in play means. Like, who knows? But they were in play on a lot of guys this year. Allen Robinson, the safeties, like they were in play on a bunch of people.
Agreed. This has been great, man.
It has been great. Thank you to everybody in the comment section. It was awesome being able to read the comments going back and forth. We are one day away from the Eagles players reporting to camp. I think 2 days away from the first official practice of camp. I can't wait, dude. And then we are about 3.5 weeks, August 12th, the first preseason game at home against the New York Jets. By the way, what do you think of the Eagles' black helmets?
As long as they don't wear them with the black. If they wear with but that's the thing. Like, it's going to be, it's the color rush. It'll be the black pants. I know, but I don't like that. I don't like that idea. Like, I think the helmet would look great with the white or with the dark green, that midnight green, but black, they're just trying to take funeral to another level. The black on the black on whatever more black you can have.
Like Arizona's black helmets though. Like, it has it seems like red sparkle in it.
There's some that are nice. There's some helmets that they release that are good.
I'm just looking forward to the Kelly green uniforms next year.
Who cares about another black Eagles thing? Bring back the Kelly green.
Well, they are. They just couldn't do it this year because Nike doesn't have the color palette.
Exactly. Right. But we're good. We're waiting for. We started the show 4 years ago now. We've been the Kelly green hour waiting for that return.
That's true. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurl54. Follow The Painted Lines on Twitter at The Painted Lines and on YouTube at The Painted Lines. Also, check out the website, thepaintedlines.com. If you didn't get a chance to watch the stream live, but you're listening to us now, wherever you're listening to us, please rate and review the show. For Connor, I'm LJ. The Eagles football is back, baby. Thank you for listening to the Kelly Green Hour.
You want Philly?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sanders patiently running. Sanders good cut and another block. Sanders still going inside the 40.